Hi Untitled family, and welcome to another video. If you're new here, welcome. My name is Tate and I'm an environmental lawyer and activist. Here on this channel we talk about all things environmental law, climate justice, environmental justice, and we also talk about wellness and travel just to keep our sanity rolling. So if you've been part of the Untitled family for a while, you know that we do talk a lot about climate change here. And I'm always advocating for you guys to do something, join the fight and contribute in the best way that you can, because climate change is real, it's happening, and none of us are safe, okay? What we have not touched on yet on this channel is what actually happens when it gets all overwhelming, because it will. As a climate activist, there are days when you just feel so frustrated, helpless, and hopeless. There are days when it just feels like there's no point doing any of the work that you're doing, because sometimes just when you think that you're on the road to achieving change, something happens that just derails the whole thing. I have personal experience of this in my own work. This is the time when all the worry, the anxiety, the depression, it kicks in, and in most cases it affects your life and your work. And all the floods, the droughts, the heat waves, they're not helping because they just serve as a constant reminder of the catastrophic nature of climate change. In this video, I'm going to be talking about climate anxiety and some practical ways in which you can tackle it. Some of those things, I've been using them in my own personal life and they've been helping me, and I hope that you'll be helped too. So, to begin, what is climate anxiety? Climate anxiety is a fear, worry, or tension that is caused by climate change. It's basically the effects of climate change on your mental health. People with climate anxiety, they may feel worried, nervous, or scared of the consequences of climate change and its impacts on our future and the future of the planet. Now, while some anxiety can develop into a disorder, actually, in most cases, taking action on a personal level can actually help you to alleviate this anxiety and manage what is in our control. Because we are human beings, there's only so much that we can control, and that's what we need to focus on, especially when it comes to climate change and the anxiety that is related to that. So I'm going to be sharing with you 4 ways that can help you alleviate any anxiety that is related to climate change. Number 1, you have to learn to take breaks. I cannot emphasize this enough. Breaks are very important. Don't read or watch the news. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't be aware of what's happening, but when that anxiety kicks in, it's often helpful to step away for a bit. Don't take a deep dive into all the information that is flowing around you, because that can be overwhelming sometimes and it will worsen your anxiety. At least personally it does. Personally, as an environmental lawyer, I cannot tell you how much information is shared every single day about what is happening everywhere. Ministers making decisions that are detrimental to the environment, government taking a stance on an initiative that is carbon intensive at a time when we need to be transitioning from fossil fuel economies to a low carbon economy, politics interfering with the work that actually needs to be done, leaders saying one thing but going on to do something else, waking up and hearing there's a flood there are heat waves, there are droughts, and people's lives are in danger, some people died. It is endless, okay? One thing that has helped me, especially when I feel it's too much and it's beginning to get overwhelming for me, is detaching. By detaching, I mean that I log off or I take a step away from all the news, the noise, etc., and just do something else in that moment. I'm not digging deep into a story or spending day and night talking about it. I am not actively engaging in it. Whether it's for 5 minutes, an hour, a day, a week, whatever it is, in that moment, I step away from it and I focus on other things. This helps me to relax, calm that anxiety, and find my footing again. It doesn't mean that I don't care. I mean, I don't think I'll be anxious about something I don't care about. But it just means that it has become too much for me in that moment, and I need to protect myself and my mental health. I need to get back to a place where I feel most anchored and in touch with myself again, so I can continue with this work or whatever discussions are going on. I think the act of detaching for a moment, and my emphasis here is that it is for a moment and not forever, because these are very important issues that we all need to be engaging in. But the act of detaching when it's overwhelming, when it gets overwhelming and I'm feeling anxious about it, it helps me to also reflect, what is it about this situation that is making me feel anxious? What is triggering me? Is it something I can change in some way? And those are very important questions to ask yourself the minute that anxiety kicks in. For example, sometimes I see messages flowing from a work group or it's emails. I go in and read them, and it's something that is important, you know, like an important story that could have developed that will impact our work, people's lives, the planet, and all of that. But the news is just so depressing, you know, it's stressful. And the more people talk about it, the more it's making me feel very anxious and depressed in that moment. When that happens, if it's, say, a work group, like a WhatsApp group, for example, I just close it. I stop opening the messages. Or if it's like emails, I just stop looking at those emails, you know. Just hold on for a bit, just to say, maybe not today, but I'm going to come back to you tomorrow. If I'm in a physical space where people are talking about this and it gets all overwhelming for me, I will either just excuse myself and go to the bathroom for a few minutes so that I can decompress and recharge again before I come back to it. Or depending on what the setup is, maybe I can just join another group that is not talking about the depressing stuff in that moment, because I need that. That helps me to not only process the information, but to reflect on it, but to also take care of my mental health in that moment, because it can be stressful and it can take a huge toll on you. So you need to have some of these tools in place so that you know when things are like this for me, what works best. And another thing about actually taking the time to reflect, which can only happen when you detach a bit, when you take a step away from the whole situation for a bit, you are actually able to see things about that situation that are in your control to change. So, for example, the act of physically removing myself from a group talking about depressing stuff, that is something that is in my control to change. But you can also see what's not in your control. When it comes to climate change, things that may not be in your control may be floods happening elsewhere, or a rogue minister making a particular decision that's going to impact people's lives. I mean, you don't know what that minister is thinking in that moment, right? You only know about that decision when it has been made. So there are certain things that are not within your control. So when it comes to anxiety, it's very important to sit down with yourself and reflect. This thing that is making me anxious, what is it about it that is within my control? Because if it's within your control, then you can do something to change it. You can do something to feel better. You have to learn to accept and let go of things that you cannot control, and then work on those that you can. You have to ask yourself, what is it that is in my control and what can I do now? So for example, maybe you cannot stop a flood from happening elsewhere, but you could advocate for better disaster management laws that can help to mitigate the impact of floods on people's lives and infrastructure. You could advocate for a shift from fossil fuels to cleaner energy sources, because you know the burning of fossil fuels has a detrimental impact on our climate. And as our climate changes, we will start to experience some of the detrimental impacts of that change, such as extreme weather events, floods, heat waves, people losing their lives, etc. This process of detaching or taking a step away from the problem for a moment, it actually allows you to be more objective, and it turns that feeling of anxiety into action that can actually make a change or further the work in that direction. Number 2, you need to learn to talk to others about your anxiety. So I believe that there's power in sharing your burdens, worries, or anxious thoughts with other people. As activists, we're all going through similar things, and others may be in a position where they now know how best to deal with these situations. But also, something in you always feel lifted the minute you share your thoughts and feelings with other people. Conversations with others, they always help because they allow you to get out of your head for a moment. When you're all up in your head and saturating your mind with all of these thoughts about all the disasters that are happening, how out of control we are with some of them, how hopeless this situation feels, it can bring you down and make you feel so isolated, like you're on your own. It will make you feel helpless, but there is power in community. I always find that talking to my colleagues about a particular situation or an issue that is bothering me or making me anxious, it really helps. And sometimes I even realize that I am making a mountain out of an anthill. Or when I feel hopeless, I actually realize that all is not lost, because there are other ways to still fight for the change that we want to see. It opens up my mind to new perceptions, and I always know that I'm not alone. There are people I can go to when I feel overwhelmed, and they understand because they are familiar with the situation. And some people have been doing this work for years, so they've got tools in their pockets, gems and wisdoms that can help you during this moment when you feel frustrated and overwhelmed and anxious. They can help you through it because they've been through it. They know what it's like. Now, if you're going through this and you're, say, an individual with no colleagues or a community or people to talk about this, I'd say that find people around you who are doing this kind of work or are interested in it. Or maybe that's actually a sign for you to start that safe space, to start that community yourself and create a safe and healthy space where people can talk about these issues because they are real, okay? Community helps you to focus on something else that's just not you. Hearing out other people, their thoughts, their feelings, it removes the focus from you and helps you to look at the issue with a much broader lens. In community, you will also find tools that have worked for others that could help you during these times. Now, for those of you who don't want to talk about their feelings because you're afraid how it will make you look or how people will perceive you afterwards, don't die inside. Being in touch with your feelings and sharing them is not a weakness. Find someone that you can trust and you're comfortable with to talk about it, because you don't have to die alone. You don't have to feel like you're alone. A lot of people are dealing with this kind of anxiety and they're feeling frustrated and overwhelmed. So find someone to talk to. And if the anxiety is too much to bear and it's even affecting your life, your work in a detrimental way, I'll suggest that seek professional help. There are people out there who are able to help you, therapists, counselors, and some workplaces even offer psychosocial support for their employees for when things get tough as part of a wellness initiative. Utilize those avenues. And besides, it helps if you don't feel like talking to your colleagues about this. At least you can go talk to a professional who you are guaranteed will hold that information confidential and not spread it around, in case that's your worry too. But bottom line is, talk to other people about it. It really helps with the anxiety. Number 3, get involved. Get involved in this work. I cannot emphasize enough how important it is to get involved in the work, especially when you're feeling very anxious about it. So if you're someone, say, who's worried about climate change, you're feeling anxiety, you're depressed, and you're feeling helpless and you're just like, there's nothing I can do, I can tell you right now that there are things that you can do, okay? And one of those things is getting involved. Getting involved can make you feel like you're doing something, and it can help with calming your anxiety. It gives you a sense of control and helps you when you're feeling helpless, because you're actually stepping out to do something about the problem. And remember, this comes from your moment of reflection, like, okay, this is what's been happening, this is how I'm feeling, what can I do, what is in my control to do? And one of those things is, how can I get involved in the cause? And once you get involved, you can actually feel some of the anxiety going away, because every day you know, okay, at least I did something about it today. Always start with something that you can do. Look for something that's within your power. There are actually various ways in which you can get involved. On an individual level, you can start to implement some sustainable practices in your own personal life, in your own home. For example, you could choose to walk instead of driving to certain places, because we know vehicular emissions, they contribute to greenhouse gas emissions, which contributes to climate change. So the less emissions we emit, the better our response to climate change becomes. So that is one thing on an individual level, where you can actually ask yourself, where I'm going, do I really have to drive there? Do I need to take public transport that's going to emit all those emissions there? Or is there another way that I can get there? And that could literally be, let me walk You can start to use alternative energy sources such as solar in your home, or be more conscious of how you use energy in your home. You could replace light bulbs or other appliances in your home with bulbs and appliances that do not require a lot of energy, and that is actually energy efficient. It helps you to reduce your own energy consumption. Another way is to think about how you use water in your own home. Water is vulnerable to climate change because the more the weather changes, the scarcer water actually becomes. Are you fixing leaks? What times are you watering your garden, and how are you watering your gardens? Are you just letting the shower run for 30 minutes and you're not even using that water? Like, what can you do in your own life to save water in your own home? Because those small things that you may think that they don't matter, they actually matter, because it matters how we use our water, it matters how we use our energy, it matters what we consume. Okay, you need to assess your consuming habits. Where are you buying from? What kind of practices do those people have? Are they sustainable? You know, what's their environmental impact? You need to assess those things. You could also start to use your own individual platforms, be it social media, your work, or whatever it is, to raise awareness and advocate for climate action. That's another way you can feel as an individual you are actually doing something. All these things that I've mentioned, they are things that are within our control, and they're useful ways of effecting change as an individual in your own life. This can help to reduce anxiety because you know you are playing your part in your own home, in your own personal life. So there's no guilt, there's nothing. And by the way, I'm not here to guilt trip you into anything and start thinking, oh, she was saying I need to do this and I'm not doing it, so I'm not doing my part. No, I'm just saying, if you want to ease the anxiety, if you want to feel better, one way of doing it is to get involved on an individual level, and these are some of the things that you can do so. Another way of getting involved is to actually participate in systemic processes. Individual changes alone are not sufficient. They're not enough, because the causes of climate change, for example, the burning of fossil fuels, that's so much broader than what we can do as an individual in our own home, right? So business and government and their actions and decisions, they play a bigger role in exacerbating climate change. And therefore, as individuals as well, we need to fight and advocate for vigilant leaders and for systems to be put in place that will support the change that is required in the fight for climate justice. This means that we need to get involved in causes challenging systemic structures that do not serve us in a climate crisis. So you're feeling anxious, you're feeling helpless, like there's nothing you can do. Get involved by finding ways to support these causes, either through your time, financially, volunteering, or attending protests, whatever it is that they need. Just find a way to get involved in that. In South Africa, there's quite a number of youth groups actually that are doing really amazing work on climate justice, such as Project 30 by 2030, African Climate Alliance, there's Extinction Rebellion, to name a few. These are causes that you can also get involved. Joining these groups, it can help with anxiety because firstly, you're surrounded by people who know exactly what you're going through and they can provide support. But secondly, you actually be doing something about the problem at a much bigger scale, and that can widen your impact. Being part of something that is bigger than yourself, it always yields positive results and it always feels good. Another way of participating on a systemic level is to actually participate in law reform processes. The law is very important. The law on climate change, how we're gonna mitigate, avoid, prevent certain things, that is very important as well. So getting involved in law reform is a good thing. And a good thing about participatory democracy is that as citizens, we are allowed to participate in these processes. You can either do so by objecting to certain decisions or laws that are detrimental to the environment and not necessary in a climate crisis, or you could support processes that you think are beneficial in ensuring climate justice. The parliament in South Africa, it always publishes bills for public comment, and that's a space for you to participate. Currently, there's public participation processes going on around the climate change bill, which is an essential piece of legislation on climate change that we need in South Africa, so get on that. The Presidential Climate Commission is also running consultations on climate change and the just transition. Learn more about these things, attend these meetings when they're held, and voice out your concerns and opinions. Speak out against government or corporate activities that are not sustainable. Basically, there is so much that you can do to get involved. Once you're now involved in the work around climate justice, you start to feel less and less helpless and hopeless, because you know you're doing something about it in the best way that you can. And that's the most important thing, understanding that you can only do the best that you can do, and some of these things, they're not in your control. A disclaimer I would put here is that you may not always get the results that you want, but doing something is better than doing nothing at all, because this is a fight, you know, and in a fight, you don't stop fighting because you received a blow. You work on yours too, okay? It's not over until justice prevails. So keep fighting, don't give up. Number 4, prioritize self-care and wellness practices. Take care of yourself. Take some time to rest and decompress. This fight can get so intense, it can get so frustrating, which is why you're feeling anxious right now, right? This is what's causing all of your anxiety as well, because it's such an intense thing. Climate change is a big deal. It can overwhelm you, and the disasters, they keep happening, they keep flowing, and you keep living in that, what's going to happen next? How am I going to be affected? What does my future look like? So instead of living in that bubble, burst it, decompress, rest, take care of your mental health, take care of yourself. Learn how to ground yourself first. It's not okay to neglect yourself during this fight. Your health is your wealth. You're not going to contribute much if you're sick and you're burnt out, so always take care of yourself and take mental health breaks. Take your mental health very seriously. One way you can do this is by going back to your self-care practices. What's your self-care thing? Tend to those things during these times. If it's journaling, journal. If it's hanging out with friends, go hang out with friends. If it's listening to music, do so. Whatever it is, find some time to do something that you like just for you. It's very important. When you're grounded and feel in touch with yourself first, it can help with easing anxiety. Sometimes anxiety is caused by worry and stress, which can easily be dealt with if we take some time to recharge and feed our own souls. Find something to do that is completely unrelated to the work you're doing daily. Attend a cooking class, exercise, meditate, visit an art gallery, something that is not, what do we want? Climate justice, when do we want it? Now! Okay, something that's not that. Just detach for a moment and find something that is not that will help you to just rest and decompress for a while. Doing this doesn't mean that you're abandoning the cause. It just means you know that it's important to take care of yourself first. You cannot do the work if you're not in a good, healthy space. So rest, reset, and come back stronger. Alright you guys, these are some of the tips I wanted to share with you on what you can do to deal with or alleviate climate anxiety. When this happens to you, do not be discouraged. You are not alone. There are people going through the same who can help you, and so many tools that are available to deal with that kind of anxiety. Take care of yourself, talk to others about it, get professional help if you need it. The point of this video was to just show you that you don't have to live life anxious. Climate change is happening and it can be distressing, but there are tools that you can use to fight climate change while still taking care of yourself and your health and being in a good mental space. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Leave any comments or questions or thoughts down below in the comment section, and don't forget to share this with other people who might find this helpful. And please subscribe to my channel if you're not subscribed yet. Until the next video, stay true, keep fighting, and keep the earth clean.